Now, after idealist theory, I will speak about social contract theory. This is to help the students whose studies have suffered setback because of corona crisis. In contrast to the idealist theory, which I have already discussed, the social contract theory takes a very different position about the origin and nature of the state. Most important are the three thinkers: the British thinker Hobbes. Hobbes was born in 1588 in the 16th century, and he wrote in 17th century. Then second one is the English philosopher John Locke. Locke was born in 1632, so he was also in 17th century. And then comes Russo, French thinker Russo. Russo was born in 1712 in the 18th century. You remember, 18th century is known for Enlightenment in Western Europe, and Enlightenment was the culmination of Western modernity. Enlightenment ideas were belief in reason, belief in progress, belief in freedom, belief in the historical, unilinear historical course of development, also secularism, nationalism. So, Western modernity is based upon these ideas, also humanism or anthropocentrism, scientific temperament or scientism, individualism, technocentrism, and also I said nationalism, historicism, etc. Now, first let us talk about Hobbes. Hobbes rejects idealist theory. He said that the state is not a natural entity nor a divine body. It is an instrument created by the individuals through social contract. That means he wants to say that there was a situation when there was no state, the political state had not yet emerged, and this situation he called the state of nature. That is the natural state, natural condition, pre-political. In this state of nature, the individuals lived in a horrible situation. It was nasty, brutish, poor, and it was a situation of war of all against all. Because every individual is power hungry and egoist, very selfish, so there was keen competition. So it was a situation of disorder and anarchy, and that is why the individuals, for the sake of their self-preservation, their security of life, they applied their reason and they entered into a social contract. Through this contract, each individual gave up all his freedoms, liberties, rights to an external power, that is the state. Every individual gives up his or her rights and freedom on condition that all other individuals will do the same. As a result, out of this contract, an external power emerged, that is the state. It is the sovereign body, and since it is not a party to the contract, therefore it has no obligation to act in accordance with the contract. It has no accountability, and every individual must obey this state. It is the sovereign body with absolute power, and it is an external body. So Hobbes starts with the individual, but ultimately he ends up with the absolute power of the state. But one thing comes from his theory, that the state is created by the individuals, that he admitted. It is a contractual, it is a product, it is a result, outcome of the contract. It has a contractual nature. Next comes John Locke. John Locke was influenced by the ideas of Hobbes, but John Locke took an opposite position. True, John Locke also started his theory giving importance to the individuals, but the difference between Hobbes and Locke is that Hobbes ultimately gives absolute power to the hands of the external sovereign state, but Locke, when he starts with the individual, he up to last he continued to give priority to the individual rights and freedom. John Locke also said that there was a situation when there was no political state, no political society. It was a state of nature, that is a natural state, just like Hobbes. But the difference is that according to Locke, the individuals were very good natured, calm and quiet, gentle, and they lived quite happily. But some practical and disadvantages cropped up. They followed natural laws, but certain problems cropped up, like confusion or deep controversy emerged as to what is the definition of the natural law, what is natural law and what is not. And secondly, how will the natural law be implemented or executed or administered? And thirdly, if there is a controversy over the natural law and its implementation, who would adjudicate? Who will decide? Who would decide the controversy and give verdict? That means legislative, executive and judicial. All these three kinds of problems cropped up, and so the individuals used their reason and they made the contract through which they created the political society. Locke's theory implies that there was a second contract between the political society or the state and the governed people. and the individuals, better to say, and the individuals, as a result of which the government or the legislature came into existence. Now, what is the nature of the political society or the state? According to Locke, it is for the individuals, for the interest of the individuals, for the liberty, freedom, rights of the individual, that the state was created. So the very purpose of creation of the state is to protect the individual rights. That means it must be a state or a government with very limited powers. Its sole purpose is to protect the three natural rights of the individuals. First, right to life, second, right to liberty, and third, right to property. If the state does not protect these individual rights, then according to Locke, these individuals have the right to resist the state. That is a very radical thought, because theoretically he is accepting the right of the individual to disobey the state, and the individuals can go for a change in the government, preferably through peaceful constitutional means. But one government can be rejected, one government can be replaced by another government. There is nothing wrong in it. Now, individual rights, individual freedoms were given so much importance in Locke's theory that Locke is considered as the father of classical liberalism, or some people call it individualism. Liberalism gives emphasis on individual liberty and limited power of the state and as well as government. Finally, we come to Russo. Russo both Locke and Russo were very much influenced by the ideas of Enlightenment, Western modernity. Russo begins like Hobbes as well as Locke. He talks about the state of nature and the social contract. But the difference is that Russo, according to Russo, in the state of nature, the individuals were good, gentle, having a noble, peace-loving nature. They lived happily. So there is, in this regard, there is some similarity between John Locke and Russo. They both of them differ from Hobbes in this respect. But then the question is, why did the individuals enter into a contract to create the state? Russo said that gradually population increased, division of work began to take place, private property emerged, men lost their innocence and nobleness, and so there was corruption, injustice, problems like this. So the individuals applied their reason and entered into the social contract through this contract they created a community. See, this community has a general will. General will is the refined combination of the real wills of each individual. Every individual has two wills, real will, unreal will. Unreal will is selfish, it often misguides an individual, but real will, it is directed at the well-being of the whole community, it is never selfish, and all these real wills are taken together and refined, then we have the general will, the concept of general will of the whole community. By definition, it can do no wrong, it is never selfish, it is morally always right. And this general will is embodied in the state. So you see, for Hobbes, the state is an external power, sovereign power. For John Locke, the state is a contractual association of the individuals. Contractual association means every individual has freely and voluntarily joined the state, maintaining his or her individual identity. Individual identity is not fully lost in the state in the theory of John Locke. Individuals have certainly surrendered a part of their freedoms and rights to the contractual association called the state, but not whole. In case of Hobbes, the individuals surrendered their rights, freedoms totally to the state. But in case of Locke, the individuals retained most of their rights. That is the contractual association. And in case of Russo, although he follows social contract theory, but unlike Hobbes and Locke, Russo is an idealist philosopher. That means Russo says that individuals surrendered all their freedoms and rights to the community, to the general will of the community, to the state. But Russo's argument is that as a result, did the individuals become slaves of the state? No. Isolated individuals had natural freedoms, but when they surrendered their natural freedoms to the community, in exchange they got back, they received in exchange a more meaningful freedom, more meaningful right as a citizen of the state, as a member of the political community. I was an isolated individual, I enjoyed natural freedom, but that was incomplete, insufficient for a human being. So, we entered into the contract and created the community which has the general will, and general will is embodied in the state. So, that means we lost our natural freedom, but gained the more enriched, more meaningful moral freedom. So, as member of the state, as member of the community, we become moral beings. This means that the individual must obey the state, because the state represents the general will of the whole community, and the general will is composed of the real wills of the individual. If I follow the general will of the state, of the community, then I follow actually my own real will. That means I actually can attain genuine freedom. But if I am misguided by my unreal will, my selfish unreal will, then what will happen? I will be misguided and I will be allured to some misconception of freedom. That is not true freedom. So, if I violate the directives of the state, in that case I am guided by the unreal will. In that case, the state must apply force upon myself to make me free. So, Russo ultimately gives too much emphasis on the community, general will of the community. He started with the individual, but ultimately he glorified the community and the state as the representative of as the embodiment of the general will of the community. The national community, the nation, that enjoys great importance in the theory of Russo. Take one example. Taslima Nasrin criticized the Muslim fundamentalism in Bangladesh, or Gauri Lankesh in India. She was very rational, open-minded, brave lady. Now what happens? Hobbes will say that the individual has no right to criticize the state. Locke will say the individual has liberty and rights into which the state must not encroach. And Russo will say the national community must be honored. The national community is most important. Now, criticisms. Hobbes is criticized by the liberals. John Locke is criticized by the idealist thinkers because he gives too much emphasis on the individuals and also private property. So the Marxists sometimes criticized that he indirectly justified the capitalist system of property, private ownership over the means of production. Actually, Locke inspired his theories are generally associated with the glorious revolution in England of 1688, and Hobbes' ideas are generally considered as associated with the Puritan revolution in England, and Rousseau's ideas are generally considered as inspiring nationalism and also the bourgeois French Revolution of 1789. Rousseau's ideas are very complicated, complex sort of thing. Social contract theory is combined with idealist theory. Social contract theory thinks that state is an instrument. That is true in case of both Hobbes and Locke. But idealist theory thinks state has an intrinsic value, not a mere instrument or not a means to achieve some other purpose. No. Rousseau begins with the state of nature and individuals and social contract. But through contract, the state has emerged as an organic community in which the individuals are totally immersed, merged. Individual identity is lost. The community identity is supreme. But Rousseau's point is that I lose as an isolated individual, but I gain back a fuller, a more complete, more meaningful individuality as a citizen of the national community. There is debate. Rousseau gives priority to the individual or to the community or the state. Ultimately, he is advocating a theory that favors suppression of individual liberty or rights. If the individual goes to violate the directives of the state. So ultimately the liberalism will criticize Rousseau's social contract theory. And Marxism will say, Hobbes, Locke, Rousseau, nobody understood that in a class divided society, the state is an organ of class domination, organ of coercion. Okay, that's all. I thought that I will upload tonight 4 theories, but it is not possible because I have some other sudden workloads are there. So these 2 I will upload today, and the other 2 theories perhaps I will upload tomorrow or day after tomorrow. Okay, thank you very much.